and having some type of cyber awareness training is really, really good, because we do say people. Technology has come on so much that there's a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence and automation that's built into different solution stacks or technology stacks. But that people process piece is still the key concern, having someone click on something and put in their credentials.
That was Paul Donegan, the country manager for Ireland at Fortinet. And here on today's episode of Tech Talks Daily, we're going to delve into the urgent, ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity, specifically focusing on the issue of supply chain security, because if we go to Ireland, for example, they're known for its open and export-driven economy, with a GDP exceeding $504 billion in 2021 alone. And as a result, it's become a hub for international businesses. And yes, while this presents a wealth of opportunity, it also comes with its own set of challenges, chief among them being the increased risk of cybersecurity breaches. So Paul is going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience on how companies both small and large can better protect themselves from cyber threats that exploit the weak links in the supply chain. So today's conversation aims to give you a comprehensive understanding of the growing risks in supply chain security, the complexities involved in managing it, actionable strategies that organisations can employ, and will also explore the pressing need for holistic cybersecurity awareness training, not just for employees, but also for suppliers. And given the fallout from high-profile incidents like the SolarWinds hack, I think it's imperative for organisations to be vigilant, proactive, and informed. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Dublin in Ireland, where he is going to share his insights and share some of the great work they're doing at Fortinet. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is Paul Donegan, and I am the country manager for Ireland for Fortinet. I spent almost 20 years in the IT industry, and the last 10 of which have really had a focus on kind of network security and cybersecurity.
Well, it's a huge pleasure to have you on the podcast today, especially from your location in Ireland as well. One of the things that's appeared on my radar recently is, given Ireland's pivotal role in the European economy, is how it's also become a particularly attractive target for cybercriminals. Can you expand on that? And are there any specific sectors that seem to be more vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Ireland has always been, I suppose, a gateway for foreign direct investment. So organizations from the US or even from other countries who are looking to expand into Europe and have used Ireland as that location. So because of that, it does have a bit of an impact in terms of those organizations being a target. Now, it's interesting to say when we look at kind of the whole supply chain piece and the impact from a vulnerability perspective, there's no really one key organization or one key profile. Previously, we would have thought it would have been all around manufacturing. We would have had a bit of a focus on OT, and Ireland does have a quite a large manufacturing presence. I think one of the statistics I was looking at was over 90% of all of our exports come from manufacturing, while 10% of our total workforce is all in manufacturing, and that's with multinationals. But when we have a look at the whole supply chain cybersecurity, from a cybersecurity perspective, it kind of just goes beyond just a particular organization. So we're seeing small, medium business, because what we're seeing now is there's such a skills shortage or a skills gap that organizations are having to use sometimes many third parties to help them on digital transformation journeys, to help them, move workloads into the cloud, to help them with different investments that they've made in different technologies that allow them to run their business. So it's very broad, if that makes sense, in terms of where that attack vector might come from, or why the bad guys, if we want to call it, might look to target not just Irish or organizations, but global organizations, really.
And speaking on a global scale, I think over the last 3-4 years, we've all been on somewhat of a journey, and things that we might have taken for granted, like the supply chain, suddenly appeared quite fragile. But another thing that appeared on my radar was how supply chain security has grown in prominence as a cybersecurity issue too. And that's something that we've not heard that much about. So can you tell me more about that, and also how that affects not just large organizations, but also small and medium-sized enterprises like you just mentioned?
Yeah, so I think one of the first times we probably would have heard about supply chain being an issue was the Target a number of years ago, where I think it was a HVAC organization came in, and they had the third parties were able to break into Target because of a vulnerability that someone actually brought on site. We all know about SolarWinds and discovery of two backdoors within their software. It's all publicly referenceable. But if we think about that, right? So if we think about if every organization today was to map out all the different third parties that they use on a weekly or on a monthly basis, that are enabling them to do business, be it, from development of code to delivery in the cloud, or be it from a manufacturing perspective. So if every business was to look at their own value chain in terms of how they productize what they're trying to do, and by value chain, I mean understanding the workflow that they need to get their product out and all the different intricacies that happen along the way, it becomes a bit of a risk factor, because we then need to start to look at, are we really doing the proper risk assessments to understand who's coming onto our environments? What devices are they looking to bring on? Have we done any posture assessment around those devices to see, are they secure themselves? Do the organizations have a security policy in place or some type of cyber risk and government strategy in place? And a lot of the time, what's happening is we're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We're trying to get code delivered, or we're trying to get projects delivered to allow us to commercialize or start to gain revenue from them. There's a lot of oversight in terms of where we are from a cybersecurity, or where organizations are from a cybersecurity perspective. And that's something that I think organizations need to focus on a little bit more.
100% with you. We've talked about the issues around things like supply chain, and I think for the first time it's the critical infrastructure that can look incredibly vulnerable, and other things we take for granted, as you mentioned a few moments ago, the SolarWinds hack. I mean, do you think we've learned any lessons about the vulnerabilities in supply chains, critical infrastructure, particularly regarding software? And do you think events like this are prompting a reevaluation of best practices right across the board? Is that what you see?
That's a really good question, actually, because I do think certain organizations have adopted, I suppose, different strategies around how they're going to protect themselves, but others haven't. So I think it's all about how people who are working within, and I say people, I say, CISOs, IT security managers, even just people working on network security or within the IT teams. I think it's all about how they try to support and educate the message up to the board, because if we're not seeing at a board level the focus around why organizations need to protect themselves, it's once that trickles down, it's very hard to get the rest of your organizations to do it. So I do think that when we see these big attacks and it's in the media, it becomes front of mind and it becomes a focus. But if it's not a topic and it's not on the agenda, at every board meeting, I think what happens is then organizations tend to kind of just let it slip by, and it becomes an afterthought. And then it becomes something that, cybersecurity, I should look, that's just a cost factor of our organization, as opposed to it being of strategic value or strategic importance. So I think when we, as cybersecurity professionals, support that narrative more and more at a boardroom level, I think then it becomes more of a focal point for businesses, and we can be a lot more proactive as opposed to being reactive. And I think that's where we need to get to as an industry, is we need to have more and more people involved in cybersecurity, and it being more of a focal point for businesses to help them as an enabler, as opposed to something that's they're seen as a headache or as something that's a cost that they don't really want to talk about.
100%. And I think another issue that we've seen is many organizations are meticulous with those internal processes, but then somehow neglect to vet their supplier security postures. Is this something you're seeing? And let's look at ideal scenario here. What should a vetting process look like out there? Because I think it is something that gets neglected, isn't it?
It is. And again, I think a lot of it's to do with time. Like, I go back to most organizations, most CISOs, most CTOs, or most C-suite that are dealing with technology today. Again, they're running at 1 million miles an hour. They've got so many different technologies deployed. They've got so many different third parties that are supporting them within that process that a lot of them have not had time to just kind of take a moment, sit back and really realize what's going on. So I think having a strategy around third party suppliers or around that whole supply chain within your organization is really good. But I also think making sure that, be it once a quarter, every 6 months, that you're sitting down and you're mapping out kind of what does that look like. You're running through a process of simulating what a ransom attack would be like to your organization. You're doing tabletop exercises and involving your board members or your C-suite doing it. You're understanding, who is gaining access to what, why they need access to that particular environment, and being able to put controls around that is really, really important. And being able to have a proper test methodology for your vendors, but also a posture check for those third-party vendors that are coming in, that they have to have a particular security and risk assessment that they have to sign up to or that they're adhering to is really important as well. And if we start that from the offset, then it means that we're not having to react down the line if something happens. But if we're doing it up front, it's really important. I think having that as part of your strategy and having the board buy into it is also something that's really important.
And if we were to zoom out just for a moment, what would you say are the most frequent mistakes or even oversights organisations often make when it comes to supply chain security? And is there any advice you can offer on how some of these pitfalls can be better avoided?
Yeah. So if you look at the profile of most attacks that have been out there, it has been because someone's just been given unrestricted access to an environment. A lot of the time, the environments that they're getting access to are on flat networks. And it means that if someone was to gain access via that third party, they're able to pivot across multiple points within that environment and gain access or gain keys to the kingdom. If I was to look at, one particular strategy, let's say, not even talking about technology, just talking about a strategy, I would have to focus on zero trust as a strategy. And I've seen and heard, I suppose, previous speakers on your podcast talk about zero trust, which is great. We just need more people to start to do it. But really, if we take that down, that in effect is basically allowing us to look at who's gaining access to what exactly they need access to, how they're going to get access to. And what we're doing is we're limiting the level of access that particular person is getting to allow them to do what they've been brought in to do and nothing else. They can't pivot from there. And I think that's really important. Now, one of the important things we also need to look at is advancements in technology have meant that it's allowing organizations to leverage technology and have the technology implement those controls. So there's not a huge amount of manual overhead on an organization to do that. And I think that's also really, really important. So again, going back to it, limit the level of access, limit the control around what they have access to, posture check around the person that's coming back in, but making sure that it's a consistent and evolving security posture around those third parties is also very, very important. It's not a case of just opening access and forgetting about it. We need to consistently look at it. We need to limit the access to the level of time that person's going in and making sure that after that's there, that we restrict that access then again. So it's quite important that we do that.
And you've also mentioned the urgency of training on all employees and suppliers around cybersecurity industry. And it seems that as long as I can remember, it's always been people being blamed for the biggest vulnerabilities in cybersecurity. And sometimes it feels like a bit of a get out, but I suppose just to try and put this or solve this problem once and for all, can you elaborate on the exact kind of training initiatives that can actually make a difference? Because I suspect we've all sat in corporate training exercises where it's just clicking next for 20 minutes every 12 months, getting your little pass and moving on. But that doesn't really fix anything, does it?
It doesn't. No, like there's kind of, to me, there's two different types of training that anyone needs to look at. I think we need to look at how we use our language when us as cybersecurity professionals are talking at board level. Using acronyms and using technical jargon just isn't going to work. You're going to lose the people that you're talking about. Trying to also talk to someone at a board to say that, we're doing zero trust and these are all the different tactics that we're going to deploy as part of our strategy just isn't going to work. So at that point, I think that people within organizations need to look at the strategy that's right for them and communicate their own organization's strategy to the board and tell them that they're leveraging different types of methodologies to do so, but use a language that's right. Now, the other piece is, if you look at most organizations today, there's such a sprawl of different technologies that they have deployed that it's very hard for them to keep up to date with training and education around all those multiple different GUIs that they need to understand to try to run their environments. So what we're starting to see is a lot of organizations look at, well, what are the consolidation platforms that we can look at? What are the integration points or the interoperability of our existing investments with other technologies so that we can look at a multiple technologies or a single technology that allows us to be trained up, allows our people to be trained up and educated, that we can have a single point of orchestration or visibility to allow us to run our environment and not be so dependent on multiple third parties to support that. So I think making sure that our workforce is up to date as well is really, really important. And having some type of cyber awareness training is really, really good, because we do say people, technology has come on so much that there's a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence and automation that's built into different solution stacks or technology stacks. But that people process piece is still the key concern, having someone click on something and put in their credentials. So I think educating our workforce is also cyber awareness, some type of cyber awareness training, something that's really important as well.
And aside from human-centered approaches, are there any other technological safeguards organizations should maybe be considering to secure their supply chains? And also, where does Fortinet suite solutions fit into all this? Is there any examples you can provide of how you address some of these issues?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So we find ourselves at the moment working with a lot of customers around kind of what does that cybersecurity transformational workshop look like? So, we're lucky enough that we have a solution that allows us to talk to our customers around the convergence of networking and security. So bringing a lot of the investments that they've made from a infrastructure perspective across their networking, their switching, their access points, and adding an overlay of cybersecurity as solutions, or our cybersecurity stack. We call it our fabric, which basically looks at all the interconnecting components that an organization would look at or have invested in, and look at how do we integrate that together? What's the interoperability and the automation that comes across that stack? But what we also work with customers on is seeing where they currently sit from a cyber maturity perspective. What are the key, not projects, but what are the key tactics that they need to look at to allow them to become a more, to allow them to increase their cyber posture, their cybersecurity posture? Where do they sit today and where are they looking to go to? And I think that's really important, is that, so we leverage across our solution stack, our Fortinet labs. Basically what that is that's our threat intelligence engine. So what it does is that looks and it takes heuristics across different parts of our customers' networks and allows us to take automated actions on what we're seeing or the heuristics that we're gathering from that. And I think more organizations need to look at leveraging more automation in what they're doing. But a lot of it starts with how they design and architect out their environments. So there's no point in organizations looking at having flat, disparate networks. They need to look at segmentation. for organizations that are born in the cloud, they need to look at how they're segmenting out their applications that are the keys to their kingdom and who has access to those applications as well. I think a lot of it is to do with learning. A lot of organizations will just go with what they know, but there's so many different technologies that are out there today that will allow organizations automate a lot of the security policies and a lot of the security practices that they need to have. Just, I think people are just get a bit comfortable with what they've got and are not consistently checking and testing, where are we now today? How can I just bit by bit allow my organization to be that little bit more secure? And what are the technologies that I need to do that'll allow me to do that?
It's such a good point, because I think future-proofing security is a journey. It isn't a destination or a box-ticking exercise that can be put in place and then just leave it there. Because as cybersecurity threats evolve, I've got to ask, what other steps should organisations be taking to continue to future-proof their supply chain security? And are there any other emerging threats that we should be aware of? Because I suspect that you see them all. I don't know how you sleep at night. You must get to hear all these stories firsthand. But anything else you're seeing out there?
Well, it is interesting. If we talk about kind of the future piece, we do see a lot of cyber criminals are starting to leverage a lot more artificial intelligence themselves and automation themselves with how they're, how they're increasing the level of attacks that are out there. So if there's any advice I have for anyone, I'd say is stop operating in silos.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, what we see is the businesses that don't operate in silos, that haven't got their arms wrapped around, this is my environment, no one else goes near it, but that are talking to the team that are working on the digital transformation piece, that are talking to if it's an IT environment, that they're talking to their OT environment. Those teams seem to have a lot more stronger security postures than the ones that don't, because what happens is you've got conflicting interests within your business, and you've got conflicting policies, you've got conflicting maturity of how your organization deals with cyber attacks. So the organizations that actually come together and have more collaboration around what they're doing, where the business is going, are normally the ones that actually have a better and stronger cybersecurity posture than those that don't. The other thing I'd say is that what we should see is that people who work in cybersecurity, who work in the IT industry, the next event you're at, try bring someone that doesn't work in that industry to that event. We need more people educated. There's a massive skills gap across the UK and Ireland in cybersecurity. There still is a crazy amount, thousands of openings from a job perspective in cybersecurity. We need more people to be educated around cybersecurity. We need more people to work in that industry. And the only way we can do it is that if those who are in the industry are bringing more people to events and educating more people around what cybersecurity is and how important it is.
Again, such a great point. I was reading recently, I think there's a 3 million job shortfall in APAC being predicted over the next few years. And if we look right across the world, it's 0% unemployment in cybersecurity. So anybody looking to retrain in an industry that's not going to be put out of place by AI, that is the one, isn't it? It's such an exciting place to be in, not only to work in, but have the ability to work anywhere in the world. There's not too many industries I can think of like that.
No, and even if we look at how technology has evolved, even over the last 3 years in cybersecurity, it's sometimes, even for me, I work in the industry, it's hard to keep up. So, we do need a lot more people to get involved in it. It is quite exciting when we start talking about, the difference of, good AI versus bad AI and what does that look like, and it becomes a bit of a sci-fi kind of theme if you want to think about it that when you're talking to people who are not involved in cybersecurity. But it's a great industry to get people into, and we definitely need more people to get involved in it.
And you mentioned something there. It is an incredibly exciting place to work in, but it can be a struggle to keep up because it is continuously evolving, and there is a pressure on everyone to be in an almost state of continuous learning. So the question I've got to throw back to you. Is where or how do you self-educate to stay ahead of the trends and keep up to speed with everything?
That's a really good point. So I think I've been lucky enough to work with some of the best thought leaders and technologists in the world. I spent quite a lot of time with John Kindervag, who's the godfather or the founder, if you want to call it, of Zero Trust. Myself and John spent a lot of time in the car together, going to meetings, talking about different things. But most recently, actually, where I've been getting most of my learning has been actually through podcasts. So commute to work, commute back, or on planes, where I've been just listening to different technology podcasts, different leadership podcasts, and different cybersecurity podcasts. Nothing kind of specific, but just kind of there's lots of different areas to do it. And then I think we're lucky enough that we have our own academy program, if you want to call that, in Fortinet, where for anyone today, you don't even have to be involved in cybersecurity. You can sign up and you can train for free. So I think that's something that's really, really important. The more people that get certified, the better.
100% with you. It's a great moment to end on. But before I let you go, for anyone listening, wanting to connect with you, wanting to find out more information about Fortinet, where's the best place you'd like to point everyone listening today to find out more?
Yeah, so our website, if you go to fortinet.com and have a look at the different areas, we have it then sub areas around your organization's size and category, and we've got great white papers giving you ideas around different architectures. What are the key areas you should look at? For me personally, LinkedIn is probably the best place to get me on. So it's Paul M. Donegan. I think if you look that up on LinkedIn, I'm happy for people to reach out, open networker, and I do like to share different ideas with different people. So yeah, that's probably the main areas to get me on. Or for any Irish customers, if they look on LinkedIn and they look at any of the Fortinet staff, we do have a hashtag that we try out there is Ask Us Why, because we just want to talk about what's making us different in the market, what is making Fortinet unique, and why so many customers have been choosing Fortinet over the last number of years to be that kind of conduit for change. So do reach out and ask us why.
Awesome. Well, I'll add links to that so people can find you nice and easily. And I think despite high-profile stories such as the SolarWinds attack, many organizations, as you said, still fail to vet their supplier security before establishing a connection and sharing sensitive company with their customer data. And I think we covered so much today, from the growing risk of supply chain security, why it matters, why it's so difficult to keep it under control, avoid some of those common pitfalls, and what they can do to better protect themselves and their customers. I'd love to stay in touch with you, see how this journey continues to evolve, but more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story and the great work you're doing today.
No problem. Thank you so much. It's great to catch up with you and talk to you, especially having listened to so many of your podcasts.
A huge thank you to Paul today for touching on Ireland's unique position in the global economy, the increasing threats of exploiting supply chain vulnerabilities, and most importantly of all, the solutions that are available. And I really think that by chatting to Paul today, I think it just encapsulated the gravity of the issue, but stressing both the opportunities and the challenges facing businesses in this modern world. But it is something that every business leader is talking about right now. And I'd love to hear your thoughts off the back of anything we talked about today. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @Neil C. Hughes. If you want to work with me, techblogwriter.co.uk. And don't forget, we've also got over 2,500 interviews out there now, so you can learn from other people that have walked a mile in these shoes before. But that's it for today. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.